Olivia Carter's story is a quiet, unrelenting testament to resilience, shaped by betrayal and the painful erasure of her own existence. At 16, she was forced out of her home after a single mistake her family refused to forgive. To protect their carefully curated image, her parents told everyone she had been sent away to study overseas, as if she had simply disappeared. In truth, Olivia was left to navigate a life of hardship alone, carrying both shame and silence as she rebuilt herself from nothing. The years that followed were not kind. She worked tirelessly, endured loss, and learned to survive without the comfort of family. Yet, through every setback, Olivia refused to break. She built a life defined not by rejection, but by determination. Eventually, she rose, quietly, steadily, becoming a respected entrepreneur, known not for her past, but for her strength and integrity. 15 years later, her parents returned, not with regret, but with a request. Their reputation, once preserved by lies, was now at risk. They needed Olivia to play along, to maintain the illusion they had crafted for so long. They offered apologies wrapped in conditions, hoping she would once again disappear into their version of the truth. But Olivia no longer belonged to their silence. At a formal gathering, surrounded by the very people who had believed the lie, she stood, calm, unshaken. With measured words, she revealed everything: documents, dates, the truth they had buried. The room fell into stunned silence as their carefully constructed facade unraveled. In that moment, Olivia reclaimed more than her story. She reclaimed herself, proving that truth, no matter how deeply hidden, always finds its way back into the light. Olivia Hayes' story is a restrained yet powerful reflection of endurance, shaped by betrayal and the quiet strength that follows being cast aside. At 17, she was disowned by her family after a scandal they refused to confront. Rather than face the truth, they chose silence. And in that silence, Olivia was erased. To their social circle, she simply no longer existed. A mistake, a name never spoken again. Left alone, Olivia endured years defined by struggle and invisibility. She worked late nights, faced rejection, and carried the weight of abandonment without ever being given the chance to explain. There were moments she nearly broke, moments when the silence felt heavier than the truth itself. But she persisted. Slowly, steadily, she rebuilt her life, earning respect not through privilege, but through resilience. Over time, she became successful, known for her work, her discipline, and her unwavering composure. Years later, the past resurfaced. Her family, once so eager to forget her, now needed her. Their reputation, carefully preserved through years of deception, was at risk. They had built a narrative of perfection, one that could not survive the truth. They invited her back, not with sincerity, but with expectation, as if she would quietly step back into the role they had written for her. But Olivia had learned the cost of silence. At a formal gala, surrounded by the same people who once believed she had vanished, she took the stage. Calm, precise, unshaken. With quiet authority, she revealed everything: the lies, the disownment, the years they had hidden her existence. Their perfect image fractured in an instant. And in that moment, Olivia was no longer forgotten. She was undeniable. Olivia Bennett's story is a measured reflection of resilience, forged in the aftermath of rejection and the quiet rebuilding of a life once discarded. At 16, she was cast out by her family after a truth they refused to acknowledge threatened their carefully maintained reputation. Rather than stand beside her, they chose distance and silence. To their community, Olivia was no longer part of the family. She had been sent away, a convenient lie that preserved their image while erasing her existence. What followed were years marked by struggle. Olivia carried the weight of abandonment through sleepless nights and relentless work, learning to survive without the support she once believed was unconditional. There were losses along the way, dreams delayed, trust broken, but she endured. Slowly, she built something of her own, a life defined not by shame, but by discipline and quiet determination. Over time, her name became associated with success, her work respected, her presence undeniable. 2 decades later, the past returned. Not with regret, but with need. Her family, whose reputation had once depended on her disappearance, now faced cracks in their carefully constructed image. They reached out, offering reconciliation laced with expectation. They needed her presence to maintain the illusion they had upheld for years. To them, she was still a piece of their story, one they believed they could control. But Olivia no longer belonged to their narrative. At a public event, surrounded by those who had believed the lie, she stepped forward. Calm, composed, certain. With quiet clarity, she revealed the truth: documents, timelines, the reality they had buried. In a single moment, their facade unraveled. And Olivia, once discarded, finally took everything back. In full view of the world, Olivia Munro's story is a quiet testament to endurance, shaped by denial and the long shadow of a truth her family refused to face. At 16, she was cast aside after a situation they deemed unacceptable, a reality that threatened the image they had spent years perfecting. Instead of standing by her, they chose to deny her entirely, telling relatives and friends she had chosen to leave, that she wanted a different life. In their version of events, Olivia simply walked away. But she hadn't. She was left behind, alone, unheard, and forced to rebuild without the support she once trusted. The years that followed were heavy with struggle. She worked tirelessly, endured rejection, and carried the quiet pain of being erased by those who were meant to protect her. There were nights when the silence felt unbearable, when the absence of truth weighed more than the hardship itself. Still, she persisted. Slowly, she built a life defined by strength, not by the denial that once defined her. 15 years later, she returned. Not out of longing, but because the past had come searching for her. Her family, whose reputation had long depended on her absence, now found themselves cornered by their own deception. They reached out, asking her to maintain the story they had created. To protect them. To remain silent once again. But Olivia had learned the cost of being denied. At a family gathering, surrounded by those who had believed the lie, she stood. Calm, unshaken. With quiet precision, she revealed everything. The truth they had hidden, the reality they could no longer escape. And in that moment, the daughter they denied became the truth they could no longer hide. Olivia Carter's story is a restrained yet powerful account of resilience, shaped by years of quiet deception and the burden of a truth denied. At 17, she became the subject of a lie her own family chose to protect. Rather than confront a difficult reality, they rewrote her story, telling friends, neighbors, and relatives that she had left by choice, chasing a life far away. In their version, Olivia was distant, ungrateful, and gone. But the truth was far different. She had been pushed out, silenced to preserve a reputation that mattered more than her existence. The years that followed were marked by struggle and isolation. Olivia worked tirelessly, building a life from nothing while carrying the invisible weight of being misrepresented by those who once claimed to love her. There were moments of doubt, moments where the silence nearly consumed her. Yet she endured. Slowly, she rebuilt herself, earning success not through privilege, but through persistence and quiet strength. Over time, her name began to stand on its own, respected, recognized, undeniable. Years later, her family's carefully constructed image began to fracture. The lies they had told for so long could no longer hold. They reached out, not with sincerity, but with urgency, asking her to maintain the illusion, to protect the version of events they had created. But Olivia had learned what silence costs. At a formal gathering, surrounded by those who had believed the lie, she stepped forward. Calm, steady, certain. With measured words, she revealed the truth, the years of deception, the reality they had hidden. In a single moment, their perfect image collapsed. And Olivia, once defined by their lies, finally reclaimed her truth. Olivia Reed's story is a quiet but unyielding testament to resilience, shaped by rejection and the painful realization of being replaced. At 16, she was cast out of her home after a decision her family refused to accept. Rather than confront the truth, they chose to remove her entirely, and in time, they replaced her. A new narrative was created, one where Olivia no longer existed, and someone else seamlessly took her place in the life she once knew. To the outside world, nothing had changed. Their image remained intact, perfect, composed, unquestioned. But Olivia was left to rebuild from nothing. The years that followed were marked by hardship and silence. She worked through exhaustion, endured loss, and carried the quiet weight of being erased from her own story. There were moments when the loneliness felt permanent, when the idea of ever being acknowledged again seemed distant and impossible. Yet she persisted. Slowly, she built a life defined not by abandonment but by strength. Over time, she became successful, her name carrying respect that no longer depended on where she came from. Years later, the past resurfaced. Her family, whose life had moved on without her, now faced the cracks in their carefully constructed reality. The truth they had buried threatened to emerge, and suddenly, Olivia's existence could no longer be ignored. They reached out, expecting silence, expecting compliance. But Olivia had learned the cost of being erased. At a public gathering, surrounded by those who had believed the illusion, she stepped forward. Calm, certain, unshaken. With quiet clarity, she revealed everything. The truth they had hidden, the life they had replaced. And in that moment, the story they erased was finally told. By the one they could never replace.